Fellow bird-to-bird marketers, please welcome to the stage Gong's chief evangelist, former CMO, and author of Courageous Marketing, Ledergor.
Oh my God, you've been everywhere.
These, and I can't tell you how grateful I am out of the penguin suit, and I'll tell you why, because I'm just used to being the most dapper gentleman on stage, and I refuse to be upstaged by a penguin.
I appreciate that. Yeah. But, you know, maybe I can get this guy over here a little bit more for me. So some of you folks here have heard you at various marketing conferences and so forth. I'm just curious, is there a story that you've been telling the audience goes, oh, yeah, that's really resonating with them?
There are many stories that I really enjoyed collecting and recalling for the book. I think one of the heartwarming ones is a hiring story. So let me take you back a few years. It was 2019, and we were putting on our first customer conference called Celebrate. And our team was grossly understaffed to pull off such an endeavor. We were expecting 500 people, and I think my team was 8 people at the time, like very small marketing team. And Russell Banzon was the demand gen director on my team, and he said, Udi, we need an intern to help us just with a lot of the work coming up to the conference. And I said, sure, just get whatever you need. Let's do that. We had the budget. So Russell was, outside of his work at Gong, a director of a dance company called The Company, which I recommend you go see. They're wonderful. I've been to many of their shows. And one of the dancers in the company was a sweet young guy named Vince Chan. Vince's day job was rolling up and selling California burritos on his cousin's Filipino food truck, Senor Sisig, which if you haven't tried, you have to go try them. They have several trucks and locations in San Francisco. Wonderful, best Filipino food. So he calls Vince. Vince is on the truck, like rolling up his California burrito. And Vince says, hey, Vince, we're doing this event at work, and we need someone to come help for 3 months. Can you come help? And he said, yeah, sign me up, whatever. So he joined us, no interview process or anything, it's just an intern for 3 months. And he comes and he quickly becomes one of the most beloved team members across the team, doing everything we asked for him and 10 times more than that. By the time we hit the event on October 8th of 2019, everyone on the marketing team knew and loved Vince. The event was a huge success. And a week after the event, Russell came up to me and said, I think we should hire Vince for a full-time job. You know, we're trying to staff our first ever full-time social media manager, and I think Vince would do a great job. For context, Vince had never worked for a tech company before, had never done social media before, and so naturally I responded, let's do it. We did bring him in for one formal interview at that point because I had to put it in the ATS system so I don't get fired. We hired Vince, and as we expected, he blew the job up like in the best way possible. And 6 years later, he is still very much at Gong. He's gone through multiple positions and promotions, from managing revenue, marketing operations, to building our merchandise store, to doing social media and a bunch of other things. And that is the story. And the reason I love it so much is, A, we gave this sweet human being a huge break in his career and changed his life for the better, as he talks about in the book as well, when we recap that story. But it was also a great lesson to me to look beyond official experience into potential. And I've come to use that lesson over and over again. When it was time to hire our first events manager, I hired someone with 0 experience in that field. He did wonderful for many, many years at Gong. The 2 best and first content writers at Gong that you might recognize because they've become huge brands in themselves, the first one being Chris Orlob and the second one being Devin Reed, I gave them their first marketing job ever, and they did really, really well for themselves and for Gong. And so I kind of break down when to use this and when not to, but I would highly recommend we all look beyond official experience whenever possible into potential that human beings bring with them.
I love that story, and it is a courageous moment because the HR person who does your hiring is going to say, what are the specs? What are your skills? And what you're sort of hired for was potential. And obviously they had curiosity and some judgment somehow. And as we start to do, where the org chart starts to flatten out, it feels like having people who have judgment and curiosity is going to be more important than people who know how to use a marketing automation tool.
100%. Let me put a kind of cap on that story with 2 quick pragmatic pieces of advice. One, I'll tell you that all the people that I just mentioned, if you put me against the wall, I could not name what any of them studied at school or college. I have no idea. I never asked them about it. I don't know to this day. And I've worked with these people for many, many years. It was just totally irrelevant to their jobs. And two, the two qualities that I look for that I think I can sense pretty well during an interview process is one, their energy, because I don't know how to teach energy. If someone comes in for whatever reason and they're low energy, I don't know how to fix that. And it's probably not going to work for what I need on my team. And two, which you can absolutely interview for, is their ability to learn a new skill quickly. And that's probably the thing that we all most need right now. I was talking with several of you when I was signing books outside even this morning, and all of us are feeling a little bit behind. I know I am. It's impossible to stay up to date with everything going on. And someone who welcomes that opportunity and challenge is like, I'm going to learn a new skill today. What do I need to do? That's way more important than last year's tool that they know or don't know how to use.
I love it. And you're only as good as the people on your team. So
yes,
really, really powerful stuff. Okay. So you've warned about best practices, and what's one that you think B2B marketers are still following that you wish they would stop following?
Well, there's one that I've erroneously followed multiple times earlier in my career, which is assuming that my bigger competitors or competitors who've been there long enough actually know what they're doing. Boy, was I wrong. And so I'm sure many of you have been in this scenario. I come into a new company. I've led marketing at 5 different companies now. So I come into a company and I'm asked to quickly put on a new website or a brand or whatever. And I start looking at other more established companies in the space. What are they doing? I'm sure they've gone through rigorous marketing testing and focus groups, right? You do, all of you. And I look at what they're doing, and then I do something that's kind of a pale version, kind of poor man's version of that. And it never, ever works out until I stop doing that. And the thing about best practices you mentioned, Drew, is that in reality, best practices are extremely boring practices. Because by definition, if you think about it, by the time anything becomes a best practice, everyone is doing it. So the best you can ever hope to achieve by following those so-called best practices is very ordinary results. You will never do anything above average by following best practices. The only way to get extraordinary results is if you put those best practices behind you and do something courageous, do something very, very different. To make sure I'm understood, I'll say that just because something is being done, it's not a reason not to do it. Everyone's supposed to buckle their seatbelts when you're driving your car. I do that as well. I'm not going to throw the seatbelt behind me because I'm courageous and I'm not going to follow the best practices. Sometimes you have to do that, especially when it comes to compliance and regulation and privacy and security and all that stuff. But when it comes to creativity, assuming that what others are doing is what's going to work is just going to be counterproductive.
I mean, courageous is not stupid, right? I mean,
no, not reckless.
Reckless.
Well, not too reckless.
Reckless. So, and it's funny because I had the opportunity to interview the CEO of Tesco years ago, and he said his career kept stalling because he kept focusing on the competition. The minute he started ignoring the competition as the head of marketing, and that he ended up becoming the CEO because he just said, I can't be bothered with that. We're going to go our own path.
We have a saying at Gong that we stole from others, so feel free to use as well, which is the leaders obsess about their customers and the losers obsess about their competitors. And just remind yourself constantly, as often as you need, whenever you see the competitor do something that makes some of your team members panic, just focus. We are focused on our customers. Just because they release some shiny new feature, we're not going to divert our engineering efforts or our marketing efforts to go do that thing because we're focused on what our customers need, not what our competition is doing.
So in order to get this team to experiment and do some of these things and zig when everybody else is zag,
he found with other researchers that what makes a great team like that work are really two foundations. One of them is what he called psychological safety, which in layman's terms is you allow your team to fail safely. Think about that. I'll repeat it because it's important enough. You allow your team members to fail safely. You'll never be wrong by upholding Gong's brand. Go and do what you need to do. I'd rather that you beg for forgiveness and ask for permission. I've lived most of my life and professional career doing that, and it's worked out pretty well. So that is the main component of psychological safety. And all of my team members, just like most employees at Gong, feel safe to experiment and fail. The other side of that, which I have to add for completeness, is people might ask, you might challenge me, like, Rudy, but if everyone's doing all these crazy experiments, like how do you keep them herded and going in the right direction? And that's where the other side comes. The other side is what Adam Grant calls, with a very non-sexy term, process accountability. And in layman's terms, that means that we all know what the North Star is that we're following and what KPIs we're trying to by doing all these experiments under the psychological safety. So a simple example, if marketing's goal this quarter is to create $10 million of pipeline, all the experiments should have in their best case scenario an explanation why this will help increase pipeline. And then please go ahead and do all these crazy experiments. I want you to do all these crazy experiments if you think then in the best case scenario that will improve our pipeline. So by creating these two things, it sounds simple. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to do. It needs the right state of mind. It's especially hard if you're in a very conservative organization around you that might not be the best ground to build this type of culture. But if you can build this, then like the sky's the limit.
There's this thing called AI. That's sort of,
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and it seems to be disrupting everything. And it's certainly shaken the foundations of a lot of folks. Now, we could link psychological safety and tell your team to go experiment. But it feels like, to me, a lot of what was done was in pursuit of, say, efficiency. We're just going to do this faster.
And not necessarily connecting it to the...
So talk about how do you see AI marketing intersecting? What are you excited about in that front?
So I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 anecdotes what I'm excited about. First, consistent with what you've seen and heard, the biggest success story
I've seen so far with AI usages in marketing have been around productivity and efficiencies. Here's 2 that I think are telling that I recently read from Adobe Firefly, 2 case studies, and notice the companies that they mentioned there. One of them is IBM, small company you might have heard of. IBM used Adobe Firefly to create 1,000 creative iterations in a fraction of the time it would have taken them to do that with human graphic designers. And the result of trying out those 1,000 iterations was that they received 26x of their benchmark engagement rates with those ads. 26x. That is wild, right? Here's a second one for you. Klarna. Klarna also used Adobe. They used Adobe and managed to save an estimated, ready for this number, $10 million of agency fees by using the Gen AI tool instead. $10 million of recurring agency fees a year. That is wild. Now, why do I kind of point out these 2 examples? Because if you're still thinking, well, I'm still busy doing something else and I can't move fast enough and keep up with all this stuff. Folks, if IBM is moving faster than you, you're doing something wrong. Okay? If they found the time to do this and they're seeing these huge effective metrics like increasing 26x their engagement benchmark, if Klarna is saving $10 million, that can now be diverted to hiring the people you keep saying that you need to hire, for doing bigger events, for doing other, I don't know, out of home, positioning, whatever else is on your charter this year, you should be doing that as well. We all should. So I love that example. And I'll end with one more that's kind of on the opposite side. So a friend of mine, Kai Lacey, he's the CMO of Toshiba. Some of you probably know him. Mm-hmm. He had this great tip, which I stole, and I encourage you to steal because he stole it as well, to be clear. And it goes like this. So a lot of people think, well, we can use AI for creativity, right? Let's say we're in a task force right now. We're trying to come up with an idea for our next campaign. We open up ChatGPT and let's ask ChatGPT for the top 10 ideas for what we can do for this campaign, right? That's how many teams would start. But then Kyle says, yeah, I do it up to there, but then I take these 10 ideas and I take them off the table and I ignore them. And now I'm going to come up with fresh ideas. So what he does, he uses ChatGPT for elimination of the most obvious ideas, which is how we should be thinking about using generative AI. If you understand anything about how it was created, it's only regurgitating everything else that people have already done. Remember the best practices we talked about?
Yeah.
These are the most boring practices in the universe, the top 10 options that ChatGPT will give you. There is nothing original there. Please prove me wrong. So he takes these 10, takes them off the table, and now we just solved the blank canvas syndrome, which is so scary to sit in front of a blank whiteboard or page. Anyone who's tried to write or create something knows how terrible that is. Once you have 10 ideas, you go, anything but these, now your creative juices are flowing. Now it's like, oh, but I can take a seed of this idea and I can turn it entirely in a different direction. Now I have something I might actually be able to use. So I think that's a really, really good use of the current state-of-the-art AI, to use it to eliminate what's not creative, but get your creative juices flowing so you do create something that is original.
I love that. suggestion. And part of this, a lot of the book is about punching above your weight. And part of the reason you need to be courageous is that so you can stand out, so you can differentiate your brand. I would love just one example, and it's in the book, but of how at Gong you punched above your weight that would be instructive for this amazing audience.
So as much as I might get sick of talking about it, I don't. But people keep asking about it. Is how we pulled off our first Super Bowl commercial back in 2021. So it was years since any noteworthy B2B company did a Super Bowl commercial, and we kept it under wraps until Super Bowl day of 2021, and we went live. We were a much smaller company back then. This was 4 years ago, right? We went live with our first Super Bowl commercial, and folks were just flabbergasted. And they started sharing it widely because it was the first time, as far as I know, ever that a commercial was created for VPs of sales, and we made that very clear in the commercial. And people assumed that we spent a ton of money. Anybody know what a in-game 30-second spot cost last year? It was between 6.5 and 7.2 million. Yeah, 6.7. There you go. We've got one.
I just learned this last week. I'm taking myself there, but I do have 3 middle schoolers, so they keep me going. Thank you for that. You heard Sam Altman saying that he's naming the next version of ChatGPT version 6.7. That was mine. Yeah, he said that. Next version called 6.7, but it went wild. So to cut a large story short, people assume that we spend $7 million on a 30-second spot. I wish I had that budget. I mean, technically, I'm firing half my team
a year. So I did not have that budget to do that. And the very short version of the story goes like this. I got an email. It was on the heels of a recent fundraise that we did that year. And I got an email from Monica at CBS. And Monica said, Udi, congrats on the fundraising. You've all seen these emails. They're trying to sell me private jets and yachts and everything else. And she said, I think you'd make an amazing advertiser for the next Super Bowl. So I would have laughed it off, but I tried to be polite and I responded, Monica, thank you for considering me. I hope one day to be in that ballpark, but I don't have anything like the budgets that we need for this. Thank you for your email. And she responded within minutes saying, Udi, if you give me 15 minutes, I think I can show you how affordable this can be and we can find a creative solution for you. I said, okay, Monica, you've piqued my interest. I love a crazy idea. I jumped on a call with Monica, and what she explained to me is like in most mediums that, unless you've worked and advertised on them, you would know this. There's the famous national spot or national edition, like Wall Street Journal has a national edition, but also has local editions. And TV and radio and all these things have national and local inventory. And so what she explained to me said, look, you don't care about getting in front of people in Idaho, right? They grow great potatoes, but they're not going to buy Gong anytime soon. You care probably about people in the Silicon Valley area, maybe New York, maybe a couple of other cities. I said, yes, that's correct. She said, well, you can buy the regional media, and when people sit at home watching the Super Bowl, they have no idea which ads are served to them from the national inventory, which cost $7 million. It was 5.5 that year. Remember the good old days? And the ads served from their local inventory, which could be the local pizza store, but it could also be your ad. I said, okay, tell me more. And then it turned out that for a low 5 or 6 figure amount, I can buy local inventory. So Bay Area, fun fact, there's only 800,000 people living in San Francisco. It's actually one of the cheaper regions to buy for local television. Think about that. Now, that's true for a consumer brand, but for a B2B brand, where at the time 60% of my audience was, now it's a little bit less than that because we've gone broader and international, but for 60% of my audience, I can reach that for maybe $200,000 of an in-game Super Bowl ad. I'm like, this is now interesting. So I asked for the a la carte menu and I started looking at the regions and I ran the numbers on my CRM to see where my accounts were concentrated. And I found that if I bought 2 or 3 regions, I can cover 80% of my audience for less than like $300,000 in media on the Super Bowl. And this is wild. So the next week I meet my CEO, Amit, at a rooftop bar in San Francisco, and I wait till we're on our second drink. And I said, Amit, I've got a crazy idea for you. I said, I love crazy ideas. And I told him Super Bowl, and he was like skeptical, like this is even too crazy for us, like this is millions of dollars. And then I recapped the Monica story, and at that point we just toasted our drinks. He said, let's go twist Tim's arm. Tim's is our CFO. Let's go twist Tim's arm. I'll tell him Udi got a great deal on the Super Bowl and we'll do this. And that was how I got buy-in for Super Bowl. We did Super Bowl. I'll end the story here. I measured it in 3 interesting ways. One, I couldn't tell you to this day who the teams were playing because I was on my Google Analytics dashboard frantically refreshing it like any good marketer should be. And I saw the huge traffic spike when our ad went live in each of the regions, and it created a new baseline for traffic that we've never gone below since then. The second thing that happened is I listened in on Gong. I set up a tracker, tell me when a customer is on a call talking about our Super Bowl ad, and I saw hundreds of calls, and I listened to several of them, and they said things like, well, I'd heard of Gong, I was kind of on the fence, but then I saw you guys in the Super Bowl, I realized you were a big deal, and I need to check this out, so I took this demo call. So I had dozens of these calls, hundreds in total. And then at the end of the week, Tim, our cranky and skeptical CFO, came to me. I loved him, in case this is recorded. I loved him. He came to me at the end of the week and said, Udi, do you realize that we just broken our all-time record for pipeline creation in a single week? So that was Super Bowl week of 2021. So armed with those 3 reports from Google, Gong, and Pipeline Report, I came with that to the board, which they loved, and that helped me secure a 3x bigger budget for the following year's Super Bowl. So that was
amazing.
All
right,
courageous example. Thank you.
So we're out of time, but
I talk a lot.
We're gonna have a rapid fire close with 1 do, 1 don't, and 1 dare for CMOs who want to market more courageously in 2026.
1 do?
Yes.
Try out a new AI tool this week. Try playing with the new AI tool, even if you're this big shot CMO and you don't have to do it yourself. Play with it. It's very humbling, and you learn a lot about the capabilities and mostly about the limitations of what the tools can and cannot do. So do that. I try and do it. I should do it more. That's a do. What was the second?
Don't.
Stop looking at your competitors. It's a total waste of your time. Just stop looking at what your competitors are doing. They're just as clueless as you are, if not more. So they're looking at you and you're looking at them like, oh, they probably know better. They don't. Just do your own thing. Obsess about your customers. You will always win by doing that.
And 1 dare.
1 dare, try a new channel or medium that you've never ever tried. Put that in next quarter's program. If you need to, set aside a 5 to 10% of your program's budget as marketing experiments, otherwise known internally on my team as Udi's Crazy Ideas. Put that out there. In the book, I explain how to rationalize that to your CFO if you need to. But try a new medium or channel you've never done. Do a small enough pilot that nobody's going to fire you if it doesn't work out, but it's big enough to be indicative of whether you should invest more in that channel. Could be out of home, could be print, it could be TV, could be radio, could be food delivery robots. That's a real thing. I tried it. Didn't work out for me.
Awesome. Udi Ledergor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Udi and I did an hour interview on Renegade Marketers Unite. Your favorite podcast app will get it is there.